The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the kitchen the morning my sister arrived. I was standing at the counter in my pajamas, still half asleep, watching the snow come down outside the window. It was a Saturday in early December, and the whole house smelled like the holidays. My husband had already been up for an hour, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop and his second cup of coffee, reading something quietly the way he always did on weekend mornings. Everything felt calm. Everything felt ordinary. And then my sister walked through the front door with her new boyfriend, and the ordinary morning stopped being ordinary at all. Her name was Claire. She was 38, 4 years older than me, and for as long as I could remember, she had been the one our family pointed to when they talked about success. She had the condo in downtown Toronto. She had the title Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at a financial consulting firm, or at least that's what she told us. She had the wardrobe, the vocabulary, the way of entering a room that made everyone turn to look. At every family dinner, every holiday gathering, every birthday, Claire was the one our mother introduced first. "You remember Claire," she would say, her voice lifting slightly. "She's doing so well." I didn't resent my sister. I want to be clear about that. I loved her. I had always loved her, even when loving her felt like standing in a shadow. But I had also spent most of my adult life quietly measuring myself against her without meaning to, and finding myself a little short. I was a speech-language pathologist working out of a clinic in Oakville. I drove a 7-year-old Subaru. My husband and I had a small house with a leaky bathroom faucet we kept meaning to fix. None of that was nothing. But next to Claire's version of her life, it had always felt like something slightly less. My husband's name was Daniel. He had spent 15 years with the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, most of it in financial crimes. He had retired 2 years earlier at 42, partly because of a knee injury and partly because, as he put it, he had seen enough. He was not the kind of man who talked about his work at parties. He was not the kind of man who walked into a room and tried to impress anyone. He was quiet in a way that people sometimes mistook for coldness, but I knew better. He watched. He listened. He noticed things that other people walked right past. Claire came through the door in a long camel coat with her boyfriend behind her. His name was Marcus. He was 45, broad-shouldered, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having been told no very often. He worked in real estate development, Claire had told us, or he had investments. She was slightly vague on the details, which I hadn't thought much about at the time. He shook Daniel's hand and smiled at me and said the house was lovely, and I thanked him and offered coffee, and for the first 40 minutes everything moved the way family gatherings always do, slowly, warmly, with the comfortable noise of people catching up. My parents arrived just after noon. My father was 67, my mother 64. They had driven up from Hamilton, where they had lived for 30 years in the same house where Claire and I grew up. My father had retired from teaching the previous spring. My mother still worked part-time at a dental office, though she had been talking about stopping. They came in, stomping snow off their boots and smelling like cold air, and my mother hugged Claire first. She always hugged Claire first, and said how wonderful she looked. And Claire laughed, and said she'd just gotten back from a long weekend in Montreal, and my mother said, "Of course you did," and they smiled at each other in the way they always had, and I went to put the kettle on. We sat down to lunch around 1. I had made a big pot of turkey and wild rice soup, the kind my grandmother used to make, and Daniel had picked up a sourdough from the bakery on the main road. It was the kind of meal that feels like something like actual effort and actual love, and I was glad to have it. Claire complimented the soup twice. Marcus had 2 bowls. My father talked about a book he was reading. My mother asked about our bathroom renovation, and I said we hadn't started yet, and she said Claire's condo had just been fully redone, and Claire waved her hand and said it was nothing, really, just a refresh. And then she set her spoon down and looked around the table with the expression I recognized as her announcement face. "I have something to tell everyone," she said. My mother leaned forward immediately. My father put down his bread. "Marcus and I are going into business together," Claire said. "A real estate investment partnership. We've been working on it for months, and it's finally coming together. It's a private fund, mostly residential development properties in the GTA, and some commercial holdings in Ottawa. We're structuring it as a limited partnership." She paused, and the pause had weight in it. "We're looking at a minimum investment of $50,000, and we're opening it to a small number of close family members first, before it goes to outside investors." The table was quiet for a moment. "We want to offer Mom and Dad the chance to come in early," Claire said. She was looking at my parents, and her voice was warm and steady. The projected return over 3 years is between 18 and 22% annually. It's a serious opportunity. My father said. Well, my mother said. That sounds incredible, Claire. I said nothing. I was watching Daniel. He had not changed his expression. He was still holding his spoon. But there was something different in the way he was sitting. A stillness that I had learned to read after 8 years of marriage. He was not relaxed. He was listening in a way that was different from before. Under the table, his hand found my knee. He didn't squeeze. He just rested it there, the way he sometimes did when he wanted me to pay attention without saying anything out loud. After lunch, when my parents had moved into the living room, and Marcus was telling my father about some property near Barry, Daniel came into the kitchen where I was rinsing bowls. He stood beside me and kept his voice low. Tell me what Claire does again, he said. She's a senior director at a consulting firm, I said. Clark Meridian something. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Do you know the name of the firm exactly? I turned off the tap. Daniel, I'm asking a simple question. It's Clark Meridian Group, I said. I think. Why? He nodded slowly. He didn't say anything else. He picked up a dish towel and dried the bowl I'd just rinsed, and we stood there together in the kitchen while my family talked in the next room, and I felt the first edge of something cold move through me. That night, after my parents had gone to bed in the guest room, and Claire and Marcus had taken a hotel 10 minutes away, I found Daniel at the kitchen table again. His laptop was open. He had a notepad beside him. He was writing something down. What are you doing? I asked. He looked up. Come sit down. I sat across from him. The house was quiet. The snow had stopped, and outside the window everything was white and still. Clark Meridian Group, he said. It doesn't exist. Not as a registered corporation in Ontario. Not with the Financial Services Regulator. I checked the FSRA database and the OSC. There's no record of it. I stared at him. The address she mentioned, the one on King Street West she told your mother about last summer, it's a virtual office, a mail forwarding service. They rent the address to companies that don't have physical offices. That doesn't mean I started. The fund she described at lunch, he said. The limited partnership. In Canada, any fund offering investments to the public has to be registered with the Provincial Securities Commission. You can't take $50,000 from a retired teacher and his wife and call it an investment opportunity without registration and a prospectus. It's not a technicality, it's securities law. I sat with that for a moment. She's my sister, I said. I know. She's been doing this for years. The condo, the job, the titles. I don't know the full picture yet, he said. I'm telling you what I found tonight. I'm not telling you what it means. I looked at the notepad. He had written down dates and names and numbers in his careful, even handwriting. I recognized the handwriting from insurance forms and renovation estimates and grocery lists. It was the same handwriting. It felt wrong that it was the same handwriting. My parents, I said. They haven't given her any money yet, he said, as far as we know. Has she asked them before? I thought about it. I thought about the TFSA conversation from the previous spring, where my mother had mentioned Claire had a friend in wealth management, and how she'd said she was thinking of moving some savings. I had not paid much attention. I had been busy. I had assumed it was fine. Because Claire was fine. Because Claire was always fine. I think she might have, I said. I don't know how much. Daniel closed the laptop. Then we need to talk to them before they hand over anything else. I didn't sleep. I lay on my side of the bed and stared at the ceiling and turned the word over in my mind fraud without being able to say it out loud. My sister's face at lunch. The announcement face. The warmth in her voice when she looked at my parents. Had it always been performance? Had I simply never been close enough to see the seams? In the morning I called my mother before she was even out of bed. Mom, I said, have you given Claire any money recently? For an investment? A pause. She mentioned the fund last summer, actually. We transferred some of the savings account. It wasn't a huge amount. My chest went tight. How much? Another pause. 30,000. Love. She said it was a good time to get in early. I sat down on the edge of the bathtub. Okay, I said. Don't do anything else. Don't transfer anything else. Can you come back over today? I need to talk to you and Dad together. My parents arrived at 10. Claire texted at 10:30 to say she and Marcus were going to swing by around noon. I wrote back that we needed to push it maybe later in the afternoon. She sent back a thumbs up emoji and said no problem. Daniel laid it out for my parents at the kitchen table, the same way he had laid it out for me. He was calm. He did not editorialize. He showed my father the FSRA search results on his laptop. He showed them the OSC registration database. He explained what a legitimate limited partnership offering would require. My father put on his reading glasses and leaned toward the screen. My mother sat very still. "She's our daughter," my mother said, when Daniel finished. "I know," he said. "There could be an explanation." "There could be," he said. "That's why I think it's important to ask her directly, with all of us together, before anything else changes hands." My father took off his glasses. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "How long do you think this has been going on?" "I don't know," Daniel said honestly. "The corporate registrations I can access go back several years. The company she's told you she works for has never been registered in Ontario. That's as much as I can say." My mother made a sound I had never heard from her before. It was small and sharp, like something giving way. Claire arrived at 2:00. She came through the door in her coat and scarf and looked around at the four of us at the kitchen table and stopped. "What's going on?" she said. Nobody spoke for a moment. And then I said, "Sit down, Claire." She looked at each of us in turn. Something moved across her face, a flicker, quick and controlled, and then she sat. I let Daniel ask the questions. I didn't trust my voice to stay even, and his was already even. He asked her about Clark Meridian Group. He asked her about the registration status of the fund. He asked her about the $30,000 our parents had transferred. She deflected at first. She said the registration was in process. She said there were legal complexities she couldn't discuss. She said Daniel was misreading the databases. She said it with confidence, and I watched my mother's face move toward relief at the confidence, the way it always had, the way we had all learned. And then Daniel said, quietly, "Claire, I spent 15 years investigating financial crimes. I know exactly what I'm looking at." The room went very still. She looked at her hands. 1 minute passed. 2. "The fund isn't registered," she said finally. My mother closed her eyes. "The company I've been telling you I work for I left 2 years ago. It was restructured. I didn't want to tell you." She paused. "I've been consulting. Independently. It's been slow." "The 30,000, my father said. His voice was careful and quiet. "Where is it?" She looked up at him. "It's there," she said. "I didn't spend it. It's in an account. I was structuring something legitimate. I genuinely was. I just moved too fast on the family piece before the registrations were complete, and I know how that sounds. I know. It sounds like fraud," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "It wasn't meant to be," she said. "I wasn't trying to steal from you. I would never." She stopped. She pressed her fingers against her mouth. "I'm in trouble," she said. "Financially. I have been for a while. The condo is mortgaged past what it's worth. I owe money to people. I thought if I could get the fund going, actually running and registered properly, I could pay everyone back and it would have turned out fine." My father was looking at her the way I had never seen him look at her before. Not with anger. With something more complicated than anger. With the look of a man reassembling a picture he had been holding for 38 years and realizing it was not the picture he thought. "Why didn't you tell us you were struggling?" my mother asked. "Because I'm supposed to be the one who has it together," Claire said. Her voice broke on the last word. "That's what I do. That's what I've always done. I'm the one who has it together, so you don't have to worry." No one spoke. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. Dad, I'm so sorry." My father stood up and walked around the table and put his arms around her, and she cried in a way I hadn't seen since we were children, without performance, without any shape to it at all. My mother put her hand over her mouth. Daniel looked at me across the table, and I looked back at him, and I reached over and put my hand on my mother's arm. It took the rest of the afternoon to go through it carefully. Daniel helped Claire put together a list of everything, what was owed, what existed, what was salvageable. The $30,000 was still in an account, as she had said. That was something. Marcus, it turned out, was real, and also in over his head. A development partner who had gotten tangled in Claire's version of the plan without fully understanding the legal exposure. He would need to be dealt with separately. By evening, my mother had stopped crying. My father was at the kitchen table with a notepad of his own, making lists the way he always dealt with problems, by itemizing them, by making them concrete, by turning chaos into a sequence of steps. Claire sat across from him, answering questions, her voice worn down to something quiet and plain. At one point, My father looked up and said, "You have to call a lawyer on Monday. Not a friend. A real lawyer who handles this kind of thing. And you have to be honest with them about all of it." "I know," she said. "And the money comes back," he said. "Not eventually. Soon." "I know. We're not going to pretend this didn't happen," he said. "But we're not going to let you disappear into it either." Claire nodded. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her look. She looked her age, maybe older. Later, after my parents had gone to bed again and Claire had taken a cab back to the hotel alone, I stood at the kitchen sink washing the cups from the afternoon, and Daniel dried them beside me. The house was quiet again. The snow had started up once more, soft and unhurried against the window. "Thank you," I said. He set a cup in the cabinet. "For what?" "For not letting me talk you out of it last night." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "She loves them." That part was real. I know. It doesn't fix it. I know that too. We stood there in the quiet kitchen, washing and drying, and I thought about Claire at 38 trying to hold a shape she had built out of borrowed money and careful language, trying to stay ahead of the moment when the shape would give way. I thought about my mother's face at lunch when Claire had said 18 to 22% annually, the way she had leaned forward. I thought about my father in the parking lot of a Zeller's in 1996, teaching Claire and me to count change. I thought about how far a person can travel from one place to another while the people who love them are still standing where they started, waiting. I didn't know what came next for my sister. I didn't know if she would call the lawyer. I didn't know if the money would come back in full, or what a realistic timeline looked like, or whether the story she had been telling for years could be replaced by a different one. But I knew my father had not let go of her at the kitchen table, and I knew my mother had asked why, not just what. And I knew that those things, imperfect and insufficient as they were something close to the beginning of what came next. The kitchen light was warm against the dark window. Outside, the snow kept coming down. Daniel put the last cup away and folded the dish towel over the oven handle, and I turned off the tap, and we stood there together in the quiet of our small house with the leaky faucet we kept meaning to fix, and for a while neither of us said anything at all.